we use what's called product innovation methodology. And what this is essentially you have your design thinking at its core with a product lens through that. You're thinking about that desirable, viable, and feasible. So what's desirable from the customer or human-centric perspective, viable from a business perspective, and then feasible. So that's your technological feasibility. And the thought is that those are the three criteria for true innovation.
Welcome to Productside Stories, the podcast where we reveal the very real and raw lessons learned from product leaders and thinkers all over the world. I'm your host, Rena Lexon, CEO of Productside. Let's dive into today's episode. And today I have the pleasure to be speaking with Veit. Anne is a seasoned product leader and strategist with over a decade of experience driving digital transformation and customer-centric innovation. She is currently the head of product strategy at Razorfish, a marketing transformation agency, which helps brands connect with people through experiences. Thanks for joining me today, Anne.
Thanks for having me, Rena.
Yeah, and I am very excited about this conversation because man, product management plus agency approach, there's a lot of companies out there where they don't have the typical, I would say, typical product management goal of building a one-to-many type solution, but yet you just have to do it for your clients. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. But before we get started, tell me about your story. How did you get into product management? Why this career?
It's funny because I look at a lot of college graduates and they don't always know what they're going to do. And I think also product management, when I entered the workforce, it had taken on a different role because of technology. So I went to Indiana University, the Ernie Pyle School of Journalism, was a journalism major. And I think that journalism background and always questioning why, how, what, and also the investigative portion of it, I think that lends itself easily into a product strategy or product management role. And I think throughout my career, it just happened to evolve that way naturally because I gravitated towards things that were around solving problems and creating solutions, whether it was new product development early on in my career until now, product strategy.
So I haven't met that many journalism majors, but I will say that I have seen a lot of product managers and product leaders with a bit of an artistic bent. So music often comes up, or theater. And I think for very similar reasons that you're citing here. But journalism, yeah, I mean, you have to have a very empathetic, curious approach, trying to figure things out, understand root causes. So,
well, and I've done a lot with improv and storytelling. So, I mean, there's a little bit of, I would not say I'm comfortable on stage, but there you go.
well, definitely more than me. I am not very good at improv. I do like to volunteer, but I'm very bad at it. Improv aside, we're here to talk a bit more about the agency setting for product management. And some people might think, okay, what does it even mean to product manage on behalf of a client? So could you maybe share how product management in an agency setting is different from a traditional product management role?
Yeah, so a lot of times clients are coming to us because they have a specific need and they want to, it's to augment existing, or they want to innovate, or something, they want to change the direction, increase revenue, all that kind of stuff. And so there's usually something specific that they're coming to us for, or we're going to them and saying, hey, we can solve this problem for you. So, and I think from an agency perspective, those core tenets of product strategy are still around, even from like an on client or a private side perspective. We just are accelerating it, really, if you think about it. We don't have necessarily a long runway and the knowledge from an internal team perspective. And so, which actually is very helpful, because I think when you're trying to dive into problems and what I reference as falling in love with the problem that's facing the customers, and that's not a me quote that's common in the industry. But when you have a bunch of people that are involved that are not so immersed in the client side and their brand, their product, sometimes they can look at it from a different perspective and it adds a lot of value.
So, Anne, are your clients coming to you with problems to solve or investigate, or are they coming to you asking you for a solution?
It's a little bit, I don't think they want us to investigate in terms of, they're not saying that um straight up, but that's part of the process when we are developing a solution or an innovation or some sort of new idea for the client. It's always about the investigation or what we call discovery from the beginning.
Right. So, have you ever been in a situation where a client comes to you, asks you for something, and through that project, you realize, hey, this is not going to be a great idea. It's probably better for us to pivot, and here's why.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for sure that's happened. And what we tend to do is we help the client understand, hey, this is really what's going on. We've met with your customers. We did focus groups. We did usability studies or whatever went into us learning about the problem. And this is what we discovered. And we think that if you do XYZ, you're going to achieve greater benefit from that. And so then we really do try to plug what would be a better solution.
So you're able to then have a voice in the solutioning. And that's actually what I'm trying to get to
Yeah.
because, and I think that's maybe not even different from a lot of product teams that work for their companies around, they have various stakeholders who ask them for the solution and they have to go in and then say, well,
Mhm.
actually, what's the underlying problem? So it sounds like you're still doing that and have the ability to be a true advisor in
Yes.
what the solution should
And
be.
we believe, or I believe strongly in a collaborative environment and cross-functional environment. So when I say cross-functional, creative, product, data, tech, etc., all of us with an equal seat at the table having an open discussion and looking at, hey, here's some legit data on what customers are thinking. Here's some numbers from the business. Here's some what they can and can't do technologically, and taking all that into consideration when you're coming up with, all right, here's the problem we want to address, this is going to be the most impactful to the business, here's how we can do it.
Okay, so that actually makes me think of something else. And this is a typical, I guess, when I talk to product leaders, let me say it's a controversial topic of when they are hiring for product managers, some product leaders really prioritize domain expertise because what they want is a product manager who really understands their industry, their market. And some say, no, let me just get it's much easier to train someone on domain. Let me get the product management skills of curiosity, empathy, customer understanding, because is harder to teach. Now, since you're working at an agency,
Mhm.
you are working with a diverse client group, different markets, different segments.
Mhm.
So, how do you deal with the domain expertise? How do you get up to speed in a new industry, for example?
Well, and we still have domain experts, and what's the beauty of being part of the strategy discipline is you have a lot of different domain experts at your fingertips. And then plus we have a lot available in terms of research subscriptions and all of that. And so it's not that we don't keep domain experience at the forefront, but I would say, at least from my perspective, is that, again, I believe in that marketplace of ideas. So a fresh look at a problem may be solved through someone that does not have a specific vertical experience. So, and it doesn't mean to ignore that, when someone does have that experience, but just be open to different ideas and thoughts.
So let's talk about team structure because you started kind of talking about it. How do you structure a team to work on a client project?
And it depends upon the client, but the ideal structure will just go from there. So we like to use what I call product acceleration teams. And so it's a cross functional team. It usually always involves product creative, data science or data analytics, technology, user experience. And then if you think about it as sort of a wheel and cogs, and you can move people in and out depending upon how much they're needed. But starting with that core type group, it allows you to look at all the various aspects of a product dimensionally.
So why do you call them product acceleration teams? Maybe go into that because I'm not too familiar with this term.
Yes. So, and we could brand it anything, but the reason why we say acceleration, or I do, is because a lot of times with clients, you're dovetailing into existing processes, existing sprint calendars, and release schedules, and all of that. And so, um, we want clients to be able to innovate and innovate quickly, especially in today's emerging tech market where you need to get stuff out. We don't have, at least in my mind, I don't think we have the luxury of these year long runways. It's more like months. So, how do we make a team come up with solutions, innovation, etc., but then speed up it getting implemented and delivered to the market?
I'm gonna All right, that makes a lot of sense on product acceleration teams. And come to think of it, I also understand that your team essentially has a much shorter timeline, right? Clients want to see results. Are there any frameworks or strategies that you use on your team to help you, I don't know, get to an answer faster,
Mhm.
or something that you use? Um,
Well, so we use what's called product innovation methodology. And what this is essentially you have your design thinking at its core with a product lens um, through that. And so when you have that product lens on top of it, you're thinking about, I've referenced DVF before, but that desirable, viable, and feasible.
say that again because I don't think our audience necessarily heard you. DVF.
Yes. So DVF, so desirable. So what's desirable from the customer or human centric perspective, viable from a business perspective, and then feasible. So that's your technological feasibility. And so, um, and the thought is, and I agree with this, is that those are the three criteria for true innovation. Because you have a customer that wants it or needs it, it's going to be good for the business, and you can implement it technologically. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think we teach that as basically the 3 points of product market fit. I
yeah.
guess instead of desirability, we say value, or,
Hmm.
valuable. But
Hmm.
that makes a lot of sense. So you use essentially the product market fit triad.
Hmm.
And is there anything that you do to maybe educate the client sometimes when one of those doesn't work out? I think that kind of goes to my previous question around what happens if you're hired to do something, but it's not the right call.
Well, and I think, there's always a lot of the thinking that goes into this and smart thinking and proving out. There's business cases that we'll get involved in to prove out, hey, if you did do it this way, you would show return on that investment, or you would see an uptick in customer loyalty, or whatever KPI the client is trying to get to. I would say that, at least in my experience, it's not necessarily contentious discussion. It's more collaborative. Everybody wants to do well. Everyone wants the customers to adopt whatever it is. And adoption of any new functionality or new feature is sort of your key to success. I mean, if nobody's using it, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean that brings up another really good point. A lot of product leaders they often struggle with the go to market aspect, right? Like actually getting to okay, they built it, they feel like they've validated product market fit should be there, but yet this product is sitting on the shelf,
Hmm.
and that's usually because I mean there's a lot of culprits here, but sometimes it's because the go to market team is just not enabled, or the
Hmm.
company maybe supported the launch of the product, but hadn't really thought about the marketing budget required to now make it business as usual. So, have you been in this situations where you've built something for the client, but then it's not truly supported by the company?
Hmm. Yes, and I think one thing that we stress is your change management aspect, especially when it comes to internal products and platforms, your communications plans. And then, we have an excellent social media team and innovation team, and making sure that these people and these experts are on board from day one. So again, when I talk about the product acceleration team and people moving in and out based on need, those are the kind of people that you want from day one. Hey, this is what we're doing. And they may fade out a little bit in the middle during ideation, rapid prototyping, but then they really need to play a huge role at the implementation phase and talking about it in the market, getting interest, all that kind of stuff. Especially if you need to almost train customers on how to use something, because it's adoption is incredibly important. I think people underestimate the importance of adoption.
So I can imagine, right? So when I talk to product managers and they have a department, an internal department that's super happy with them, and some that are not quite as happy, or that they have, let's say, friction in working together with.
Mhm.
Does that exist? I'm just thinking you're like a third party. So on one hand, you might have more backing and support, and on the other you might not have those like deep relationships with all the other departments that are required for success of your efforts.
Well, and I would argue that the head of product should be making those relationships. But I think and I kind of think about this is, I mean, it's a good question, but I think it is the role of product, because you tend to bring people together, because you need to get something, because you need to innovate, you need those ideas, you need to implement. It is in your best interest to make friends and form alliances, because the goals are the same across everyone. Um, and so really, I think when there's a world where things are contentious, you're not doing your best work as an innovator, is my thinking.
That's interesting. What is your relationship with the head of product for your clients?
Not everyone has a head of product really with their clients. Or a lot of times it's, we're dealing with chief marketing officers, people within their marketing teams, brand teams, etc. So it's not always that there's a one-to-one between product at Razorfish and product at the client.
It's interesting to me because let me ask this question then. For the ones that do have a head of product, do they view you as like an extension? I know your client oftentimes is the marketing team, but do they
They they
use
view us as
partner?
an extension. My experience has been that there's been partnership. Where it gets a little bit more tedious is the lower roles, and making sure we complement their team and not just take away from it. And a lot of that's just collaboration, making people feel good. You want them to trust in that you're helping them, that you're not trying to take away from them in any way.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of companies turn to you for your expertise and kind of we talked about, you have a focus on innovation, on digital strategies, on experiences,
Mhm.
and you leverage internally a lot of I would say the modern product management best practices around design thinking and cross-functional
Mhm.
team collaboration, everything that we've talked about. Now, the next part on the horizon that is to do with innovation, and I know a lot of companies are trying to answer that question for themselves, is, how do we make the most out of the AI transformation?
Mhm.
And in a way that it's not just being part of a hype cycle, that's bringing true value to our users and our business. So I'm sure a lot of clients are asking you that question, but how do you help them then navigate AI successfully?
Well, and there's a couple things there. So one, AI everywhere. So it's the topic that everyone wants to talk about and be well versed in, and not everyone is. And we tend to use AI now for a catch-all of anything innovative. Because people, if you say, well, what do you want the AI to do? And they'll describe it, and you're like, you don't really need AI to do that. So I would say, at least from what I'm doing with a couple clients right now, is you think about what is your AI strategy, and looking across your tech stack or your platform, and what are you trying to accomplish? Because AI is not a do this and all your AI answers will be solved. It's a series of things. And so a lot of what you want AI for is around data, and what it can do with that data and knowledge. And so one of the key phrases I heard um, at a talk a while ago was called that it was said that clients are feasting on data and starving for insights. And I think that that's very true. So we went through, in the 90s, et cetera, it was all about big data and how much data you have and collecting data, et cetera. And so, we have a lot of data. We've collected a lot of data. Now, how do we get insights from that data? And not only insights, but actionable insights. And I think that's kind of where AI fits in from that perspective. Is that like from a sales funnel perspective or something like that? If I know, hey, I have this portfolio mix and it's really not working for me. It's not getting me the returns I want. Can AI help looking at historical data, maybe some predictive analysis? Can it give you a better suggestion without you having to spend hours and hours doing research, etc.? So some of that is where you want, at least for me, where you want AI playing in that space. But you need to understand, again, what do you want the AI to do, or what are the problems that you have? And AI could be one of multiple solutions.
So, and I completely agree with you about the importance of data. In fact, I think a lot of companies are struggling because their data is so messy that they want to jump to the AI revolution, but they are completely unable to. The two most common data problems that we see at product side are one, yeah, messy data. I'm curious how you would tackle that if your client's data is messy. And then the other one is the zero data problem, where they are entering a new market and they don't have data. So I'm
Hmm.
curious your approach for both of these.
Well, and I mean, this is where things from an agency perspective, we can, play a role because we have Epsilon, our partner, so they have a ton of data. So we can leverage Epsilon and ask our clients to. But I would say one from a data perspective, and this is when you really need an excellent data team or analysis team, is to make sure that because with AI more than anything, the data really needs to be pristine. And I've heard that actual word used a lot with regard to AI and data. And so that's because, just like anything else, garbage in, garbage out. And then it becomes manyfold important when you have AI in the works, because it's working so fast to give you a response, um, that it's just going to go based on what it knows, what you're feeding it.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is when you're a product manager working at a company, there's a certain level of pushback that you have. You can basically demonstrate this product isn't worth our time anymore. We should retire it end of life or not go forward and kill it. Whereas with an agency approach, it's like, hey, do you still have that level of ability or control over what ends up getting built?
I think, obviously the client or the company has the ultimate say. One thing that I will say is that, where I think there's some differences, is that on the client side, um, you need to be careful about what's called the build trap. And there have been books written on this, and there's probably one on my bookshelf behind me. But so with the build trap, that's when, you've got sprints out the yin yang, a backlog of stuff, and you're much more focused on outputs, getting something done and out, versus outcomes. And so I think that, those are the hard discussions that the company has to have, is that are we having the outcomes that we want? How are we figuring out what gets prioritized in a backlog. Because if you're just in straight maintenance mode or everything's around maintaining, etc., where then is innovation? Because I tell you, the customer or the end user, whoever that is always going to want something new, easier, better, optimized, etc. So if you have you client, if you have a runway to getting things into market and it's more than, a few months, to me that's like, okay, you need to take a look at your process. Because if it's going to take you a year or 2 years to get new functionality or features out to a customer, that's, you know, that's a huge amount of time in today's marketplace.
So, Anne, let's say that you're talking to a product manager and they are looking for a new role and they see a role to be a product manager for an agency. What advice do you have for them? Is this the right career choice for them? Like, what should they expect?
I think product at an agency, because we have so many different clients, I find that exciting because you're constantly being challenged. But I would say also that, and I think this is true really with product anywhere, understand that product, there's what I call the exciting side of it when you're talking about product and how it works, and you're talking about design thinking and desirable, biofeasible. All these things are very exciting, but then there's, your day to day. What are you doing for 8 hours a day or whatever? And that can sometimes be tedious and not glamorous. So be prepared for what you're walking into. And then also, I think with product, understand how it's different from business analysis, from being a product owner versus a product manager versus a whatever. I understand those distinctions, because there are nuances there that will be asked of you depending upon each one of those roles, and just understand where they all fit.
Do you think that there are any, from a hiring manager perspective, any traits that you look for when you're hiring for an agency product manager that maybe a typical product manager you would, are maybe higher
Mhm.
of higher importance than a typical product
Well,
manager?
it's interesting. When I hire, a lot of times, I'll give the interviewee a practical. I'll give you a problem, and I want to see your thought process or on how you would go about solving it. I won't say I don't care, but it's not so much what the solution is at the end of the interview. I want to see how you think, because I feel like that's very important. It's interesting because you said this earlier in the conversation, what's more important, the industry vertical experience or the product skills or whatever. I feel like if someone is a good thinker, if someone is a logical thinker, writes well, etc., we can teach them about the industry. There's certain things you just can't teach someone. So, yeah.
I've heard, innate curiosity being the first one
Mhm.
of you really want to look for that. All right. And well, fascinating to talk to you about product management and agencies. Where can our listeners follow you and learn more about your work after they hear this recording?
You can certainly message me on LinkedIn, and I usually check once or twice a week. So don't be discouraged if you don't get an immediate response. But yes.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, thank you all for tuning into another episode of Productside Stories. If you found our conversation valuable today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend and make sure to subscribe to Productside Stories on your favorite platform so you don't miss an episode. Thank you for tuning into Productside Stories. I hope today's insights inspire you and propel your product journey forward. Remember, every challenge is a lesson waiting to be learned. And you can also visit us at productside.com for more free resources like webinars, templates, playbooks, and other product wisdom repackaged for you. I'm Rena Lexon, and until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep creating stories worth sharing.